hello, Freedomizers. Welcome to Zone 13, the best afternoon news show on the web, by the way. Today is Thursday, May 21st, 2015. It's 3 p.m. on the East Coast. It's noon Pacific. We're broadcasting live from the studios of FreedomizerRadio.com. If you guys don't know about it, we have a great lineup here, and our show is one of them. I'm Joanne Moretti, by the way, and Scott Ferrarello, my great co-host, is with me, too, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. Our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at FreedomizerRadio.com, are open for you. Several of our colleagues, including Lynn, AstroTurf, and Famous Anna, are in the chats, putting the links, documents, and other important information there so that you have them for your own records. And thank you, ladies, for that nice courtesy. We appreciate that, too. Remember, they're also journalists, analysts, researchers, and they're the best in the business. Today we have a ton of news and updates to get to. And first, I'd like to do a little disclaimer to let everybody who might be interested know that the things said on this show are solely my responsibility and not that of our wonderful hosts or sponsors. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts, guests, chat commentators, or phone callers of Zone 13 do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else of FreedomizerRadio.com, their sponsors, or the many valued advertisers, whether it be past, present, or future broadcasts. All right, now that that is out of the way, our show's probably rated about PG-13, too. But now that that's out of the way, let me open up Scott's microphone here and introduce him, and then we'll start the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Scott Ferrarello. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Joanne?
Very good. How are you?
Good.
Nah. Ready to do a conspiracy show today?
Sure.
Well, we got a lot of stuff to do, and we've been looking over the news, and we decided that every bit of it is relevant, whether it be Syria, whether it be what happened in Libya and what Hillary's doing, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Jade Helm, all of it. Every bit of it's related. You know what else is related, too? Is the way they're treating parents about their children and the way they're treating children in the schools. Every single bit of this is related.
Yep.
And it's all coming to fruition. And it will be happening by September 25th, if our calculations are right. This Jade Helm thing, what's his name there? Josh Ernst said, no American citizen's constitutional rights will be infringed upon during these exercises. I found that during these exercises part to be very, very significant.
Yeah. Well, since we don't have any, that really doesn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying?
They're getting really pissy to the point where they put out a video trying to get us accustomed to seeing all these military around. As a matter of fact, they told us there were going to be 1,200 military personnel participating in this. That's way underestimated. 1,200. That's how many, the vehicles that they have just on that one train in Texas. That doesn't include New Mexico, Arizona, even Louisiana is brought into it now, Arkansas, parts of Florida, now Colorado, Utah. Even in Virginia they're doing exercises. South Carolina they're doing exercises. So this isn't just the states that they said that are in the South. We're going to get to all that. But let me try to lay this out in a way that you will all see how one is related to the other. All right, let's start with some talking points, all right? Hillary Clinton, she's tied to Sidney Blumenthal with the email exchanges. And Sidney Blumenthal, Obama hated him, and he was forbidden to work for the State Department. But that's because Sidney Blumenthal wanted to bring up his relationship with Frank Marshall Davis. That's what got Obama upset at Blumenthal. It wasn't really Hillary at all. That's why he's barred from the White House, because there's other stuff that Blumenthal knows. Blumenthal is a fixer. If you're Italian, you'll know what a fixer is. If you're not Italian, that's somebody who gets things done. and Blumenthal gets things done. Let's see here. The reports from the FOIA Act and the Judicial Watch have proven that Obama, Rice, and Hillary knew that Benghazi was not random, but anybody who listens to our show already knew all that. We knew that 2 days after the event, right down to Ansar al-Sharia, this dude named Bin Kumu, and I remember his name because I liked the way it looked when it was written out, Qumu. It just looked neat right there. Something about it struck me. Now, our colleague, Denise Simon, also known as Sponge Docs, she wrote about that on September the 13th, which was 2 days after the event in Benghazi. She told everybody who was involved. She told them about even tracking the guns and the man pads, and she mentioned the man pads by name. She told us that the compound in Benghazi, that was where Stevens was. Okay, that was just a ambassador suite. The other place, the outpost for the CIA, was there for a different reason and a very specific reason. Stevens was there in Benghazi serving Hillary's interest. And I didn't pay attention to that originally when I had heard Gowdy ask that guy Hicks, who was the highest-ranking military person in Libya at the time, and he's the one that testified. He was telling them that for him, the Taliban were in the building at the State Department. Well, Gowdy asked him at one point, so Stevens was there serving Hillary's interest, and Hicks replied yes. Didn't make sense to me at first, but it certainly does now, because what do you hear this story I'm about to tell you? Anyhow, the CIA was tracking weapons. They were tracking the man pads. They were tracking stingers. They were tracking, here, I got it all written down. They were tracking mortars, machine guns, anti-aircraft stuff, some portable launchers, too, some SAM-7s, and, of course, you know about the man pads. That was very specific. There was guns being shipped from Libya to Syria, but that was being done by the Turks. Hillary didn't care about the small stuff. She didn't care about the AK-47s and the hand grenades and the grenade launchers and things like that. She was more worried about those man pads. Now, there's a reason that Hillary wanted Libya disarmed, and that reason is she wanted to turn it into her private playground, Hillary's happy camp. Hillary knew that Gaddafi was going to be displaced. She also knew he was going to be murdered. In one of the emails, it says that Gaddafi is either dead or soon will be. To me, that sounds like premeditated murder. Somebody knew he was going to be dead. Blumenthal knew that Gaddafi was soon to be dead. So that tells me there's a premeditated murder right there. Now, remember that Hillary had said that Gaddafi was going to gas his people with chemical weapons. It was an emergency. They had to go in there. We have a responsibility to protect. She sent, her and Obama sent Samantha Powers and Susan Rice up to the UN and made that whole big deal about how Gaddafi was going to start killing people with chemical weapons. The UN resolution said it was a responsibility to protect. They specifically mentioned that regime change was not part of the protocol. The only part of the protocol was to protect civilians from being hurt by chemical weapons. They also said that it was a no-fly zone. Well, all of a sudden, buildings start blowing up and vehicles are getting blown up on the roads and stuff. What part of no-fly zone involves blowing up buildings? Buildings don't fly. Neither do cars and military equipment. The whole time, Gaddafi was in touch with Hillary and with the White House and with Samantha Powers, also with the Brits and the French. Him and his kid, Saif, were saying, no, we'll get out of here. Just give us enough money to get out of here. Make sure our people are safe. Don't put any ISIS in here, and we'll just be gone. You'll never hear from us again. That was not good enough. And why, now we know why it was not good enough, is because he knew all about Hillary's plans for Libya. Like I said, Hillary was going to make sure that Libya was her own private playground. She was setting up a queendom over there. While she was schmoozing with Gaddafi and his kid, there's even pictures of her and his kid walking through the hallways up at the State Department. She was backstabbing him. She was backstabbing the Russians. She was backstabbing the Brits, and she was backstabbing the French. She had Blumenthal running around the world offering contracts to rebuild Benghazi after Gaddafi was deposed. Gaddafi was still alive at the time. But she's making deals with companies like GE and Gulf Tainer. Gulf Tainer is an Arab company that has a whole bunch of ports all around the world, including the Cape Canaveral port they just got a 35-year contract for over in Florida, right next to Cape Canaveral, NASA, the military base, all of that. It's a deep water port. She just made sure that Gulf Tainer got that contract. Gulf Tainer also has the contract in Qatar and other places. The Qataris are up to their ears involved in this Hillary scheme. Now, through the Clinton Foundation, Hillary was making all these deals, like I said, with the contractors to rebuild Benghazi. She wanted nice hotels. Now remember, Benghazi has deep water ports. That's a big, big thing. They have fertile soil. They have water, clean water. They have buildings and infrastructure that Gaddafi had already built. They have major hotel chains there, like the Hyatt Regency and, other major hotels there. They have an airport, and they, in the city of Tripoli. Russia was owed money by Gaddafi for things that they had purchased. Part of this deal of Russia helping us or staying out of the way was that Russia was going to get their money, plus Hillary promised them a contract to start a railway between Benghazi and Tripoli and, of course, the ports and stuff. Well, Hillary screwed them out of that, too. That's why Russia's pissed, is because not only didn't Russia get their money that they were owed, they didn't get that contract either. Hillary made sure that partially Muslim Brotherhood, which was from Obama's insistence, and other little puppets made up this new government in Libya. Now, the Brits and the French got mad at Hillary, so that's why they backed out of the coalition. Remember when they were the first people that even did the airstrikes were the French. Well, the Italians backed out, the Brits backed out, the French backed out, and we were wondering, why they just got out of the coalition. They weren't continuing to help us. Well, now you know. Hillary was screwing them. The Brits and the French also wanted in on the action on the contracts. They even said that they would split up Libya 3 ways between the United States, the Brits, and the French. And she didn't want that. She screwed everybody over. And Blumenthal was helping her. Now, Stevens was over there. He knew all about that. He knew what was going on. The people at the CIA compound did not. Now, the last person that Stevens talked to was the Turk. Remember that? He was a lawyer for the Turks. Well, Stevens knew that the Turks were moving those weapons to Syria, to the rebels. But we didn't even care about that because, remember, we had dropped those rebels in there. We talked about the 600 rebels that were dropped inside Syria from Libya that Obama had them put in there. So that's where the guns were going, but they tried to stay once removed. So it wasn't actually the CIA running the guns. They were doing their specific mission looking for the man pads. Hillary wanted the guns and everything out of Libya. She didn't care where they went. She would have given them to ISIS herself if they had asked her. She wanted them gone because she has bigger plans. Not only that, but she was using money from USAID, from the Millennium Challenge, from the Export-Import Bank. She was taking donations from rich billionaires and moguls like shipping moguls and railway moguls. She was taking pledges from them, too. She was building up Libya to be her own private playground, but she was using your money to do it. Not a nickel had to come out of her pocket. Every bit of it was provided by the U.S. taxpayers. She was in the money. If this didn't blow up in her face, she would be the queen of Benghazi right now, just like she's the queen of Morocco, rather. She's doing the same thing in Morocco and has been for quite some time. This woman is running a shadow government through the Clinton Foundation. That's why she didn't use our regular State Department server or put our information into our National Archives, because every bit of this was her own private thing. Now, she had made a deal with Obama. There's no way she could have been doing this unless he was aware of it, and, of course, his handler, Valerie Jarrett. So there's a lot in it for them, and that has to do with ISIS. Now, Obama just today said that he's going to start training and supporting Sunni rebels in Baghdad and in Iraq. What?
They're all Sunnis.
ISIS is Sunnis.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's the difference? They're all one big happy family.
So he's telling us to our face he's going to supply ISIS. But we've already noticed that.
Yeah, everybody knows he is anyway, so might as well admit it.
Yep. Yes, he is. He invented. They're trying to blame George Bush for the birth of ISIS. No way in hell. That is all Obama. Obama is responsible. Yes, it is. Now, ISIS...
Well, now, wait a minute. Bush was, he really helped create Al-Qaeda in this, and ISIS is just a rebranding of Al-Qaeda, so, they're
not necessarily.
They're all into it. I mean, you don't think they all do their part to bring things to where things are at now? He just didn't create these people out of thin air.
No, you're right about the Al-Qaeda and the offshoots and the ISIS. However, Obama has made sure that ISIS has every piece of equipment that they could possibly need, whether it be in Syria, which they just took over half of Syria yesterday in Palmyra. They took over Mosul last week and now Ramadi this week. The Iraqi military dropped their weapons. There were 6,000 Iraqi military. There were 150 ISIS, heavily armed ISIS at that. The Iraqi military dropped all the weapons we gave them and screwed. And ISIS, of course, is now in possession of those weapons, the missiles, the rocket launches, the equipment, bases, planes, everything. And then they just did the same thing in Syria. So Obama comes out and says that his strategy is working. Well, if handing over the Middle East to ISIS is his strategy, then absolutely it's working perfectly, isn't it? So as long as Hillary stayed out of his way, he's staying out of Hillary's way. You notice all this stuff isn't going on in Libya, is it? They had that little faction rise up, killed off the ambassador, killed off Doherty, Woods, and Smith, and now it's all calmed down. How'd that happen? Why is all this action going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and everywhere else but right there? Because Hillary's got a lid on that now. That's literally.
It's almost as like everything's a beta test for a step further. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
First you got Eric Holder, he runs guns to Mexico, and nobody does anything about that. So then they run guns through Syria to Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria to turn them into ISIS, and nobody does anything about that. And they had to do something, until they could take over Iraq, so they could just leave a bunch of equipment behind and let them take it over that way. I mean, these people would not be dangerous if they were still throwing dirt clods like they were a few years ago.
Absolutely.
So they got to be armed to the teeth.
And that's what's happening. They are intentionally arming ISIS. They are intentionally doing this. They know damn well that those 6,000 Iraqis that they trained were going to drop those weapons. They were ordered to drop those weapons and run. Now they're all sitting in Baghdad waiting for Baghdad to fall. And Baghdad will fall. They have to crash the entire Middle East because they have to have that Sharia law in there. That's self-policing. They can't have all these little factions going on. They have to do it all under one umbrella. And you all know that Sharia is self-policing. The only ones that they have to control is the imams and the ayatollahs. They control the rest. And let me tell you, those ayatollahs are on the take. Matter of fact, the ayatollah today told Israel that they're going to just wipe them off the map again. All right, anyhow, so now we've talked about Hillary. We've talked about Blumenthal. Blumenthal absolutely is a fixer. He's been a fixer for a long time. And let me tell you something, the Clintons are not going to get rid of him. Obama didn't even want him on the State Department payroll, but Hillary went around that and kept him on the foundation payroll. That Clinton Foundation, you know that all the money that goes in there, only 10% goes to charitable items. 90% of it goes back into Hillary's pocket. They are running the shadow government there, and they need to, because that's who's going to be, that's where when the globalists do take over, and that will be soon, we're going to get to that. When they do take over, our government's going to be defunct, and all the world governments are going to be defunct. She's got all the governments pulled together through that foundation. They have been building that. That's where the global governance is. It's not at the UN. The UN are just more puppets. They take orders from her. She's got more high-powered people under the thumb of that foundation than the UN wishes they had the power that foundation does.
Well, the United Nations is basically the Congress of the world government.
Absolutely.
I mean, they do a lot of stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's why she can get rid of, killing a head of state, Gaddafi, because there's no international law doesn't apply to her, just like regular law doesn't apply to any politicians here.
That's a very good point. International law does not apply to her. She is the law. She's the law. You know, here we are thinking that it's Obama and Valerie Jarrett. She makes Valerie Jarrett look like a Girl Scout.
But she, don't forget, she's just a puppet herself. I mean, there's always somebody up above them pulling the strings. And then the person at the very top, you don't know who that is because you've never heard their name before. It's never mentioned. I mean, when's the last time you heard someone on Fox News or any channel in the last, since TV's been invented, did you ever heard the name Rothschild?
Very
before
rarely.
The internet, nobody ever heard that name. And people still don't know who it is. You have to, 80%
I only heard that name once in a civics class.
Who that is.
Mhm. This is true.
Or it's said in a way to where it, just sounds like another rich guy or something somewhere.
Yeah, well, Rothschild's a part of it, but they're part of a cabal. And they're all related, too. Intermingled, related. All right, so now we've talked about Hillary, we've talked about the foundation, we've talked about the global governance. Let me tell you where the Trans-Pacific Partnership fits in. I was reading an article last night, and what jumped out at me was the people who are allowed to see it. I don't know if you guys remember our friend Ulsterman and his Wall Street Insider. He brought up the name Leo Gerard several times. Leo Gerard is the head of the Steelworkers Union. He is one of the number one globalists. He's a fixer also. He gets things done. Well, you've heard that Congress, they can't even see this Trans-Pacific Partnership unless they go into this locked room. They're handed one piece of paper at a time. When they're done reading that one piece of paper, they return it to the clerk, and the clerk gives them a second piece of paper, and it goes on and on like that. They can't bring any recording equipment in there, no cell phones, any of that. If they bring in a piece of paper and a pen and take notes, those notes have to stay there in that locked room. But they have these advisory committee and trade and policy negotiators. It says here there's a hierarchical structure, starting with the USTR, that's the United States Trade Representative Advisory Committee on Trade and Policy and Negotiations at the top. A committee that includes people like Steelworker President Leo Gerard. That's the first name mentioned in this. That man has been running around stealing mines in Africa, stealing water, stealing minerals from Haiti. He's a fixer too, but he's Obama's fixer. Blumenthal is Hillary's fixer. Then they got A.J. Benga. He's the MasterCard CEO. Etsy CEO David Dickerson. Jill Apple. She's the co-owner of Apple Pork Farms. And then there's specific committees covering subjects like labor, the environment, and agriculture that make up the next tier. Those people can come and go inside there and read this Trans-Pacific Partnership. They are not Congress people. They are not your representatives. They are globalists, global corporations. They have access to this Trans-Pacific Partnership, but your Congress doesn't. So,
because they wrote
reading first. Well, actually, yes, they did write it, but each of them only wrote a portion of it. This is just like when they first started with the Obamacare. There is no bill written. Nothing is written in legislative language. Everything is vapor. It's vague. The Congress people can only see summaries. There isn't any bill read or written. Whatever the hell they think they're voting on, there's nothing written. There is no bill. There is no Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Everything is hypothetical, what if, okay, this one wants this, that one wants that. This guy from Doug Ross Journal, all right, his name is Michael Wessel. All right, he was talking about Elizabeth Warren, and he's saying she's right about her criticism of the trade deal. Now, let me tell you about Elizabeth Warren. I do not like Elizabeth Warren. She's a full-blown communist, but what she is not is a fake. She'll tell you she's a communist. And she, who, like I said, is a communist, if she's telling you it's bad, it's bad. Then you have Alan Grayson. He wrote it. He made a video telling everybody this is bad. Rand Paul is in the process of reading it. Jeff Sessions read it, and he agrees with Elizabeth Warren. It's bad. And none of them have ever seen a real text of a real bill. It's all just vague and vapor. So they're going to write it as they go along.
Well, yeah. Yeah, sort of like Obamacare. You know, you create all these things, and then you can just go in there with a pen and a phone and change it on the fly.
Exactly. And nothing is in absolute language, like you shall, or this corporation, or this country shall. All right, so the Trans-Pacific Partnership is vague, unwritten, and they just gave it today. It already passed cloture. So now it goes on for debate. And McConnell says, well, maybe he'll let the Democrats put some amendments in there. What they're trying to do is give Obama fast track to make these deals. Well, why would you tell us for 7 years that the guy's an idiot, and we fought about Obamacare, and we fought about every single thing this guy has done, but now you want to give him fast track to make global deals? All right, so something's up with that. It's a 6-year fast track, by the way. He's only going to be there 2, so the next president gets 4 years. So they're planning ahead. However, if you look at the stock markets, you'll see that there was a flash crash the other day. In that flash crash, billionaires lost all kinds of money. One of them is Chinese, and he lost half of his wealth, which, you know, isn't upsetting me. The guy it's China's richest man. His name is Li He-jun. And he lost more than half his fortune when his solar company stock suddenly crashed over 50%. And that was overnight. And then it happened again the next day. Last time we had a flash crash was 7 years ago. So if you want to talk about the Bible and the Jewish but I can't forget the word. Anyhow, that's a 7-year cycle. And it's in the Bible, by the way. Now, all the signs are there for this major global financial crash. If you're looking at Greece and you look at Italy and you look at the United States, even China, you know, this Chinese guy lost half his wealth. They're making this Trans-Pacific Partnership deal because they have to. When this crash happens, there's going to be a vacuum. Just like when we pulled out of Iraq, there was a vacuum. It's being filled by ISIS. There's going to be a vacuum in the global finance. Now, I told you, Hillary is in with the Import-Export Bank, the IMF, the Millennium Challenge, all the big banks. So they're all going to crash. None of them passed their stress test recently. Now, if you listen to that, if you believe in the 7-year cycle in the Bible and things like that, the crash date is probably going to be around September 25th. I usually don't give an exact date, but on this I'm pretty confident. By September 25th, the global finances is going to be in such a clusterfuck. You're going to see countries flipping out. You're going to see the European Union fall apart. You're going to see NAFTA fall apart. These trade agreements are between China, Russia, Israel, the UK, France, all the big Western countries, and China. Now, they want to bring Russia and BRICS in there, too. But Russia is actually resisting this Trans-Pacific Partnership. You're not hearing any information about that, but it's all over the Russian newspapers. They don't want any part of it. They want to be top dog. And in the vague writing that they can see, that's not the way it turns out. It will be China on top with the United States secondary. That's why they're trying to get this passed. And they got to get it done by the end of August. I said last week that there was no rush on this. Why are we hurrying? Why do we need a fast track? What's going on? What's the rush? You know, we haven't even seen it. Most of our Congress hasn't even seen it. Now, today they voted on it's cleared a hurdle. This is from CNN. A free trade initiative that's pitting President Barack Obama against his own party cleared a major procedural hurdle in the Republican-controlled Senate this morning. The 62-38 vote to end debate on the bill, moving it forward to a final vote, was a victory for Obama, who had linked with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who's a Republican from Kentucky, to push the bill despite opposition from Senate Democrat leaders. To push the bill. There is no bill. It's vapor. They're writing it as they go along, just like we told people about Obamacare. They're still writing that.
Right.
It hasn't been read. It hasn't been fully written. Even now, Obamacare hasn't been read, and it hasn't been fully written. It's already been in front of the Supreme Court. Still, no one's read it.
Well, you don't have to write anything when nobody can see what's in there anyway. You just pretend whatever you want. I mean, that's why this secrecy thing is repugnant, as John F. Kennedy once said.
Yeah. It's definitely repugnant. All right, so now we got Hillary, the foundation. We got all these banks. We got the flash crash set up. We got the Trans-Pacific Partnership set up. To talk about the $6 billion settlement. Denise wrote a great article about it, but it was a $6 billion in fine for rigging currency. So it says, just pay the fine and no one goes to jail. Those that pay the billions in fines are the stockholders. There's never a personal or individual consequence. Jamie Dimon should have been in prison years ago, next to Bernie Madoff. Even more troubling is John Corzine with his criminal activity. Attorney General Loretta Lynch knows the depths of the fraudulent activities and seems to be complicit in giving individuals a blind eye. Big banks are to pay $6 billion for market manipulation. So 6 of the biggest names in finance have agreed to pay nearly $6 billion in penalties, with 5 pleading guilty to criminal charges over long-running manipulation of key financial markets. So every time Carol came on and told us that those markets were being rigged, she was right every single time. And Loretta Lynch, she's another one. She's been playing this game for a long time. So now they got this settlement. Nobody goes to jail. The people who actually were manipulating the currency, they're free as a bird. Their stockholders will pay those fines, and of course they're going to pass those on to the consumer. So the next time they take another $25 out of your checking account for service fees, it's going to pay off this $6 billion settlement. In the meantime, the guys that did it are still walking free. Now, if they brought anybody to court, everybody at the DOJ would have to recuse themselves, because people like Jamie Dimon and John Corzine and Barclays and all of those, they're all former clients of everybody at the DOJ. Remember, Holder worked for Covington and Burling, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi. They were all clients of Covington and Burling. The same with Mackenzie Baker and Perkins Coie and all those big law firms where the DOJ lawyers came from, the appointed ones. These are all their former clients. You can't represent your client and then you get a new job and now you're going to prosecute your former client. You can't do that. They'd have to recuse themselves. So what they do is sue and settle. Now, with this $6 billion settlement, you think it's going back into the U.S. Treasury? Yeah, think again. It's not.
Well, you know, when you steal $300 billion, being fined $6 billion is like being fined 6 cents. Sounds like a lot of money to us, but to them it's nothing.
Right.
You know, it's like pocket change.
Absolutely, you're right. Now, it's not the money though. It's not going back into the Treasury. You know where it's going? It's going to those activists, the acorns. He is giving these community activists money out of that. It's for this new police thing that he's got, taking over the police departments and paying these activists and training community organizers. That's where the money's going. It's not even going back in the Treasury. So he's robbing banks to pay acorn community organizers. None of it goes back into the Treasury. Nobody goes to jail.
Well, yeah, and Soros funds a lot of that too. But, you know, it's all one big slush fund.
Right. Yep.
Oh, it's just all one big slush fund, you know, and Soros is kind of like the front guy to take all the heat for what everybody else is doing. You know, when somebody wants some nasty organization or a new left-wing propaganda mill media company started, they just run it through Soros because he'll take the heat. He don't care. He's older dirt. Yeah,
and when we started busting Acorn, we told everybody about Acorn. So Acorn now, they told us they disbanded, but they didn't. They changed their names. One of the names was MORE. Those are the ones that the activists did a sit-in on the other day. They wanted to get paid. Obviously, Soros didn't give them enough money, or he gave them enough money, but they didn't pay the people that went out there and started the riots. They were told they were going to get paid for that. And then when they didn't get paid, they went and they had a protest at the MORE office. So this $6 billion ought to help that out a little bit, huh? You know, it pays back Soros the $33 million he put out. It pays back the revolutionaries like the Ella Baker Center and the Van Joneses and the MSNBCs and all that. It pays those people off. It pays Al Sharpton. That's where the money's going. Can you imagine that? That $6 billion could go back in the Treasury.
And they've got the market cornered on corruption, and that's exactly why they do what they do. That's exactly why the bankers and the people at DOJ is like a revolving door policy, because you're not going to prosecute your former or future employer or whatever. I mean, it's
and plus they're going to need these activists. They got to pay them because they're going to need them down the road.
Well,
and that down the road isn't too far.
It's like a dime a dozen. That's why they don't care if they screw him now. But when you're hired by a snake and you know he's a snake, you shouldn't be surprised when he acts like a snake, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you shouldn't be surprised. None of this should be surprising to any of us. If you knew our crew, none of them are shocked. Like we said, we knew 2 days after the Benghazi thing who it was and what it was about. All right, so now we've covered Hillary. We've covered the global crash. We've covered the foundation being the global governance. We covered all these banks are in trouble. They just robbed the bank to pay off the activists. Well, these activists are going to come in mighty, mighty handy and very, very soon. So they got to pay them, and they're going to need more of them too. That's why they're doing the immigration thing. When they're putting all these people into these computers and giving them refugee status and asylum, they're also taking their names and contact. So they're going to flash mob. They're going to send out a text and say, okay, everybody go vote. or everybody go start a riot. You know they've been building that OFA database for a very long time. Well, Hillary has access to it. Those two, her and Obama, are thick as thieves now. Neither one of them can roll on the other, so they have to stay together and keep their mouths shut. Then comes the Vatican.
No one's going to roll. Nobody's going to roll. Nobody's held accountable. It's never even an option. And they make sure of that. You know, everybody's so black-nailed to the hilt that it's not even a possibility that someone's going to turn out the other one.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know why
even when they talk out of turn, like Menendez did, you know, about not liking the Iran deal. I mean, you can't even state your opinion on something as, you know, insignificant as that, because all of a sudden, this guy that's crookeder than a dog's hind leg, you know, he got away with everything until that. Now he's indicted, you know.
Exactly.
They make an example out of it like that.
You're right. They did make an example out of him. All right, so now this climate BS, the climate change, it's our biggest threat. You know, not that ISIS has taken over the whole Middle East. Our biggest threat is climate change. Well, ladies and gentlemen, your biggest threat is not climate change. If the climate is changing, it's getting cooler, not warmer. And, you know, that's pretty narcissistic to think that man has any control over the climate. All right? You are not God. Obama is not God. The Vatican is not God. They don't have control over it. There's 9 active volcanoes right now. Those probably have a little control over it. They're spewing carbon left and right. One volcano is spewing more carbon than all of mankind in the industrial ages. Anyhow, so now we have this Vatican advisor, and he came out and told us that our Constitution is outmoded. His name is Jeffrey Sachs, probably from Goldman Sachs. It says, top Vatican advisor Jeffrey Sachs says that when Pope Francis visits the United States in September, he will directly challenge the American idea of God-given rights embodied in the Declaration of Independence. Sachs, a special advisor to the United Nations and director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, is a media superstar who can always be counted on to pontificate endlessly on such topics as income inequality and global health. This time, writing in Catholic publication, he may have gone off his rocker, revealing the real global game plan. The United States, Sachs writes in the Jesuit publication, America is a society in thrall to the idea of inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the urgent core of Francis's message will be to challenge this American idea by proclaiming that the path to happiness lies not solely on mainly through the defense of rights, but through the exercise of virtues, most notably justice and charity. So now they got the Pope coming out and telling all these Catholics that the Bill of Rights isn't the way to happiness. Charity and justice is the way to happiness. That's communism. All right, now you got the Pope's advisor going to come out and tell Americans, after all these years, 38 years, you're going to tell us that our Bill of Rights is bad, and the Catholic thing to do would be to give up your rights and make sure that we have social justice throughout the world. Any money you have, it all goes into this UN kitty and gets dispersed evenly around. What? You know how wealth is made? People work for it. People invent things. People come up with products that other people want to buy. People come up with services that other people want. In the meantime, if they build their business big enough, they are even better for the economy because now they need help providing these services or these goods. Wealth is not a finite item. It's not like there's $100 and everybody has to split it. So if somebody's got 50 of it, all the rest of you have to split the other 50. That's not how it works. And they're trying to make wealth to be a dirty word. Doesn't everybody want to be wealthy?
Them. They're billionaires, right. and the less money you have, the more power and money they have. You know, even without making any more money.
Yeah.
You have nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The kind of money that most people have, that isn't even walking around money for them. And then the Vatican, there's so much wealth in the Vatican, it's never even been counted. You know, you want to start with your charity, start unloading some of those gold pieces.
That's not how commies are.
And the Rembrandts and the Michelangelos.
You know what? Commies think this way. My money is my money, and your money is my money.
And your money's also my money. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Right.
This is what this Pope, he's like the Barack Obama of the Vatican. That's all he is. He's
this one scares
communist,
me.
Jesuit, phony.
I don't even like how he got in.
You know.
How did they force out the other Pope, Benedict, and get this guy Francis in? Don't you have to wait for a Pope to die? You know.
You used to be able to. This one was an exception because they needed this guy in a position to push the same global agenda as everybody else. This way it keeps them all in lockstep.
Yeah, and to anybody who's listening out there, I'm not dogging the Catholic Church or any Catholics. I was a Catholic. I went to parochial school. I made my confirmation, my communion, all of it. Father Burke was at the house half the time. So I know about the Catholics. This guy's an infiltrator. This guy's an infiltrator. The Catholic Church has been infiltrated. It started with Kennedy, when the Kennedys started bringing their corruption in and greasing the Vatican. Well, now, this Pope forced out another Pope.
I like
John Paul just like a hostile takeover.
And it was almost like a law against there being a Jesuit Pope. I mean, there's been this black Pope and then the normal Pope. This war going on inside of it forever against the Vatican and the Jesuits, and then all of a sudden, out comes this guy from Argentina.
Yeah, well, Lynn's saying that the Pope stepped down. Yeah, he did. Benedict did step down. But why? Sounds like he was forced out. Remember there was all kinds of stories going on, and there was secrets being spilled and corruption and all of that. Benedict didn't have anything to do with that. This dude did.
He was forced out.
Something was going on there.
They don't just quit like that. Like you say, they go forever. They'll go till they're 100, most of them.
Yeah.
So there was a reason. They were just, it's just blackmail, probably.
Yeah. That could be. There was a lot of blackmail going on. And then you had the whole gay crisis. I don't know why. That's another thing, too. Everybody's talking about the priest being gay. Well, isn't gay supposed to be popular now? So you got to be the right gay, right? You can't be a Catholic priest gay. You got to be a radical leftist gay in order to be gay enough or something. I don't know how that's working out. I'm not real fond of any of it, by the way, especially with the Catholic Church. My best friend back in Boston, her sister's kid was Pat McSorley. He's the one that opened up that whole can of worms up there in Boston and got cardinal law shipped out and everything else. That kid, Pat McSorley, is now dead. He drowned in the Neponset River. He was molested by Father Gagan. Father Gagan is also dead. He was murdered in prison. But my best friend's sister was the nicest, most wonderful woman. She was a widow. Her husband had died. She trusted that priest. He would come over. They'd have dinner. He'd take the kid for ice cream and stuff. The kid was fatherless, and he thought, then the mother thought that, the kid was going to benefit from having a friendship with the priest. As it turned out, he was diddling that kid. And not only was he diddling him, but he was diddling other kids before him, and he was just shipped around instead of punished or taken out of commission. They just shipped him off to another parish so he could prey on more kids, and Pat happened to be one of those kids. He wasn't the first one.
I don't want to change the subject, but that is exactly how it works with bad cops. If by a miracle one gets caught and is found to be guilty of something and thrown out the force, he just goes to another force 30 miles away and gets another job immediately. That's what the priests do. So, I guess it works because the people hiring these people don't seem to care or do a background check. They do a more strenuous background check on you if you apply for a job mowing somebody's lawn.
Mhm. Yeah, oh yeah. You can't even walk into a school unless you get a background check. I know from being a chaperone with the kids when they go on a field trip, they do a whole background check on you before you're allowed near those kids. But not necessarily true with the rest of the world. Look at that Jeff Epstein there with his pedophile island. And all the other ones. Menendez, another one with underage people. They're preying on the children. And then they tell you that pedophilia isn't a crime.
Did you hear about the last billionaire? I just saw it like 2 weeks ago. I forget his name. But he was convicted of raping some 12-year-old girl. And they said, well, he's not going to do any jail time because he's productive. What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, in the old days, the good old days, they would have looked into that judge's bank account and saw, wow, how come you just made a $200,000, deposit in there? Where'd that come from? I wonder.
Yeah, really. This is just really bad. But it's going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get worse. Your children are not your own. Okay, so now we got the Vatican, we got the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we got Hillary and the Foundation and all the globalists and Leo Gerard, and it's all coming together. And even Obama himself did a commencement speech at the National Guard graduation. Alan West wrote a really good article about this. He says, so you've gone through 4 tough years at an American Service Academy, and you find out that the Commander-in-Chief is your commencement speaker. You sit there awaiting some inspiring address on leadership and how you, as a young second lieutenant ensign, will face the challenges as an American leader to protect our nation, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Your parents, family, and friends are there to see you transition from cadet or midshipman to the legacy of leadership. You're on pins and needles as the Commander-in-Chief steps to the microphone, and your heart is racing as you battle-tested former military president utters his first words, and then you snap back to reality and realize it was all a dream. You look up and see, in actual fact, it's Obama, and he tells you that the climate change is the biggest threat to the nation. And folks, that's not a dream. It really did happen. As reported by Real Clear Politics, Obama delivered the keynote address at the United States Coast Guard Academy commencement Wednesday in New London, Connecticut. In his commencement speech, Obama warned the graduates climate change is one of the biggest threats that they will have to face as they defend the United States and our nation's interests. This is the part I want you to hear, and because this is the threat he laid on them. In his speech, Obama said denying climate change or refusing to deal with it is negligent and dereliction of duty. So he told them, if you dare deny there is climate change, that is dereliction of duty. That's a threat, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, they know all this rhetoric don't mean anything anyway. It doesn't cost anything, And most of our politicians are ex-lawyers, so they went to college to learn how to lie.
They did. And especially Obama. Obama not only went to college to learn how to lie, but Obama's been doing some extracurricular lying. He uses this dark arts. Now, dark arts is usually hoogie boogie and like that voodoo that his mother-in-law does in the White House there. But there's also a dark art of speaking and dark arts of politics. Well, Obama uses it. Part of it is the neuro-linguistic programming. He tells you 3 truths, and then he tells you a lie, or he tells you that's why he has to do something. He'll say, okay, the banks are crashing, and the financial situation in the world is getting really bad, and ISIS is on the move, and that's why we need this Trans-Pacific Partnership. No, it isn't. The first 3 truths, those are true. But then he threw in about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. No, that is not true. But because he told you 3 truths, you automatically assume that the 4th one is true also. He also fluctuates his voice. Go ahead.
Isn't that exactly what the news does? every night.
Yes.
I mean, NBC and the mainstream ones, they don't tell you. They tell you about 90% lies and throw in like 10%. But Fox does the same thing.
Yeah. They do. They all do. And as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court said it was legal. They can lie to you. They're entertainment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they actually passed a law that said propaganda is okay now.
Yes. That should tell you something, too. All right. We're back. I promised you when we get back I'm going to tie Jade Helm into this. All right. We talked about the financial crash. We talked about the Global Foundation and how they're all making deals and how this Trans-Pacific Partnership is a rush job, even though it isn't fully written, because they're expecting this big crash. Now, when this big crash comes and they're moving to the global governance and the global financing, people are going to get really pissed. And especially, according to this congressman, the people in the South are going to be more pissed, and the people in the Midwest are going to be pissed. The liberal areas, they're going to go along with this. But let me tell you what this congressman says. He says Obama would meet armed resistance from Southerners, and he would face arrest. Congressman Stephen Palazzo, he's a Republican from Mississippi, said he doesn't believe that Obama is plotting to take over Biloxi, Mississippi. But if he ever did, Palazzo suggested that he wouldn't be able to get away with it. He may find himself arrested if he ever did issue that order, Palazzo said. He said it Tuesday on the Gallo Show on Mississippi's Super Talk FM radio. And you've also got to think, if you look at states like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, there's probably more guns per capita per individual. If people are looking to take down a civilian population or overthrow a state, they probably start somewhere where the gun laws are a lot stricter than in the South. Palazzo says he doubts the U.S. military would ever turn on the civilian population. Anyhow, the host, Paul Gallo, he joined Palazzo in this line of thought. He said, if there ever happened to be any president who wanted this to happen, it wouldn't be this president, because this president is further apart from the military than any president in our lifetime. Palazzo agreed, attacking the president for what he called Obama's distaste for the United States military. I want to stop right there because although Obama is further away from our military than any president in history, Obama has drastically changed our military. He has purged generals, admirals, captains, lieutenants, colonels, anybody of authority who might be a patriot. And he's replaced them with affirmative action appointees and people who have no business being in leadership positions. So they're all a bunch of yes men. Plus, he's turned it into a social experiment. He's gotten rid of the Christians. He's gotten rid of crosses and chaplains. He has made them walk around in red high heels. He has done diversity training. So our military is now just one major social experiment. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of good men and women in there, but he's jerking them. Our military is in trouble. Your kids, your sons and daughters who nobly joined the military to defend our country and our Constitution and our population are now being jerked around and slapped around and humiliated. The morale in the military is so bad. I really don't think that they would turn on the American people. But you never know, because look who he has replaced the leaders with. And then the same with the cops. He wants to federalize the police departments. He actually has the police working with the military for these Jade Helm programs, the exercises they're being called. Well, ask yourselves, they tell you that these Jade Helm exercises are to practice for overseas contingencies. Well, the cops are not going overseas. So right there, you got to tell yourself it's a BS story. And then, like that congressman said, you shouldn't do it in the South. Guess where Jade Helm is being held mostly? In the South. They want the people to get used to seeing the military. They told us there Yeah, 1,200 military taking part in these exercises. There's more than 1,200 vehicles on that train we saw going just to Texas. Another thing that we're failing to notice is every single state in the Union has a military base, National Guard bases, and they are fully staffed. So, you're thinking there's 1,200 people, maybe 400 of them are in Texas. Well, yeah, but then you have all those bases in Texas, too. So now you're talking 20,000 just in Texas.
You know what I want to know? I want to know how they're going to pay all these people when the money's useless.
Well, the defense budget just got a raise.
Yeah, I know, but when the dollar's not worth anything, what are they going to pay them with? Cracker Jack?
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a very good point. The soldiers aren't going to get paid. The cops are not going to get paid. They'll do it for a little while, but after a while they got to drop out.
They have a backup plan. They must be
to
hoarding something else. The new currency, they probably already have that market cornered there, and something. Because even mercenaries won't do what you want them to do when they're not getting paid. I mean, that's what
maybe they'll sue another bank. They just got $6 billion suing the banks.
$6 billion. That's nothing. It's just chicken.
It'll pay soldiers for a little while.
I mean, look at look at Corzine. He stole $30 billion on a weekend.
Yeah, well, you can't forget. You can't forget. Also, it's not just the military and the police. He's also got AmeriCorps, Job Corps. Remember, he's got all those illegals. One click away, one text away.
Well,
he's got every one of their numbers.
They'll probably work for a Walmart card. So, yeah, I guess you got it there.
And you have all these activists. So, you got all these people that are on the payroll. They're on the payroll. They're having a sit-in at the payroll office. So he's got all those activists all trained and ready to go. He's got all the illegals who the only person that they are loyal to is Obama. Obama's telling them that the rest of us all suck. All the politicians that are fighting against amnesty, they suck. So who are they going to listen to? Obama, who's giving them all the goodies, right? Brought them all in. He brought them in by plane. They didn't even have to cross a border. He went down and picked them up. When the court said that you couldn't put any more illegals into the computer and put an injunction on it, all he did was change the word. Now they're not illegals. They're refugees and asylum seekers. So
he's
got them.
They don't have to follow any laws. So when you don't have to follow any laws, it doesn't matter what the judge says. It doesn't matter what the people think. None of that matters because you've got a license to do anything you want.
Yeah.
There is no
so if say he's got 100,000 illegals on his little text, and he decides that he wants them to go and start a bunch of trouble in Texas, and maybe even kill Abbott. They're going to do it.
Every time he gets up there, or his wife gets up there, and starts slamming white people and talking about how terrible they were treated all their life, it's basically inciting riots.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. I mean, Al Sharpton is a professional riot inciter.
Al Sharpton's also a pigeon.
Law. It's still against the law, but it doesn't matter. There's people like that. They can even screw the IRS out of $4 million in back taxes and get away with it.
Yeah, well, Al Sharpton's a pigeon. He's been to the White House hundreds of times. Of course he's carrying messages.
And a stooge.
Yeah, and he's a snitch.
He's done it all.
He's still a federal snitch.
And
he goes out to Baltimore and Ferguson, and he gets all the skinny, and then he goes back to the White House and tells the White House all about it, and then they give him his orders, and he goes back and does what he's told. And, of course, MSNBC and CNN and ABC and Fox, they're all going along with it, and look at the nepotism there. I mean, half of MSNBC is on Obama's payroll. Ben Rhodes is brother of the guy who's running CBS, CNN, they're full of it. I mean, they were proven to be full of it a long time ago when they were doing green screen war scenes.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
Anderson Cooper was never even in theater. He was in a studio with a green screen behind him.
Yeah,
with the
and
war
it was
pictures
so
playing
obvious
behind him.
too. You know, it looked like an episode of Gilligan's Island. It was ridiculous. They had the helmets on and everything. There's no wind blowing, nothing. I mean, you could tell it was inside of a studio. But most people bought it.
Yeah, they buy it. They buy everything. You know, people have an 8-second attention span. That's long enough to read 140 characters. When you're writing articles,
also,
ladies and gentlemen, make sure your headline counts.
It's also 1 second less than a goldfish. Don't forget that.
I know,
I'm
and a
serious.
goldfish, by the time it gets to the right side of the tank, it already forgot there was a left side.
They actually did a study. They said a goldfish has a 9-second attention span, and humans went from 12 seconds to 8 seconds.
Yes. And so, you know, nobody's going to get all this. Nobody's going to put it all together unless it's done for them. So we're trying to do that. All right, so then today, speaking of Jade Helm, the Defense Department came out and released a video so the public will see it and accept what's coming. The public will see it and accept what's coming. That's what the State Department said about this film. They want you to accept what's coming. Those are very chilling words. With all news pipeline readers continuing to send us pictures and video of military movement that they have been seeing in their daily travels, including the second video, which is included in this link, from ANP friend Stacy White, showing a military train in Snyder, Texas, that stretches for well over a mile and had over 100 pieces of military equipment on it. The picture and video show that there's shocking proof that even our children will not be immune from the effects of what they're preparing, for as even kids are now being included in FEMA camp roundup drills. In this video, they have a father holding a child on its shoulder behind a barbed wire fence in a FEMA camp. They have other little children running around in this video. Why would you show that to the American public? Why are they behind a barbed wire fence? Why are those babies behind a barbed wire fence for this drill?
Pre-programming, conditioning.
Yeah, your children are ours.
Just like that
right?
background commercial in that AARP. You know, it's pre-programming.
Yeah, it is.
So when it happens,
you're
like, oh, wait, where did I see that before? You know.
Well, just like the TSA. You tell your kid their whole life, don't let anyone touch your privates. And then when you take them to Disney World, the first thing you do is hand them over to a stranger to have their privates touched. So that tells the child, don't trust the parent, that the government is more powerful than the parent, otherwise the parent would be protecting them from the stranger touching them, right? So that shows the child.
It tells them rules apply unless you're wearing a uniform. Then then they can do whatever they want because they're wearing a uniform.
And your parent is standing right there while you're getting molested in front of them by a stranger in a uniform.
Nowadays. And everybody should have quit flying right at that moment.
Yeah.
And that would have stopped. But nobody did. Everybody thought, oh, well, you know, it's just a mild inconvenience to be groped and stuck in a X-ray machine that's probably unraveling my DNA.
Yeah. Yep. And if you go through the machine, instead of getting a pat down, they're going to pat you down anyhow. They're going to say, oh, we saw something up on your shoulder or whatever. That's what they told me. I went through their machine, and then they said they had to pat me down anyhow. They said that there was something on my shoulder that showed up in the machine.
Yeah.
Only thing on my shoulder was a bra strap with a plastic ring.
Well, maybe they thought you were packing a couple of guns in that bra or something. I don't know.
No, I'm packing, but it isn't guns. You know, and back to the children not being your own. Now, you've heard about all the medical kidnappings that's been going on. We chronicled Justin Pelletier over here. We also told everybody about how they have a zero policy, a zero tolerance policy in schools. You know about the little kid that bit the Pop-Tart that drives Scott insane. He brings it up every show. He's still mad about that. You can't bite the gun shape into a Pop-Tart. We told you about the couple little 9-year-olds who got in a plastic ruler sword fight in the schoolyard and were expelled. The only ones you can't expel is the minorities now. But these little kids are getting hassled. Their parents are getting hassled. They're getting kidnapped from their parents. We told you about the homeschool family. That lady's got 10 kids. Her kids are clean. They were healthy. They were above grade average, every one of them. But because she was living off the grid, they took her 10 children away from her. They still haven't given those kids back.
It's
those
worse
kids
than
were
North
in no
Korea.
danger.
Don't forget that story about the woman shackled and handcuffed because, I don't know, she forgot to write a note for her kid.
Absolutely. That brings us to this story. A mom was arrested, shackled, and jailed because her honor roll son had 3 unexcused absences at school. The kid ended up, he was absent 12 days. He had a doctor's note for 6 of them. And then the other 6, the doctor wrote a note for her for 3 of those because, you know, it was extended. The kid got sick. So he extended it for 3 more days. So there's 3 absences that are unexcused. Listen to this story. Screven County, Georgia. Mother and substitute teacher Julia Giles was arrested this week because her son had too many unexcused absences from public school. Writing on her Facebook page before turning herself in, Giles said, "If anyone feels the need to go public with this, feel free to do so." We felt free to do so. The facts are that Sam originally had what they consider 12 unexcused absences. 6 are allowed per year. So he had 6 more than is acceptable. But the doctor reissued 3 excuses that Sam didn't turn in. So basically, I'm being arrested for 3 days. She also noted that her child has A's and B's in school. WTOC's Don Lagana contacted Screven County School Superintendent William Bland, who told him that the school district is working within the law. It's important for these children to be in school, and I think the courts recognize that, he said. Lagana also learned during his investigation that several other parents have been convicted for the same offense at this school this year alone. Luckily, Giles was quickly released, but now she'll still need to appear in court to defend herself. I'm home. I was actually placed in an ankle shackles. I was told that doing so is procedure. I was respectful and followed directions. Sheriff Mike Kyle allowed me to leave after being booked and photographed without having to call a bondsman. I will call tomorrow to get my court date. Thank you for the support, Giles wrote to WTOC when she returned home. Why did they shackle that woman's legs? That is not for her protection.
Can you believe that? Yeah, I know. Now you tell me why a police officer would do this. If I was a cop and someone said, "I want you to go arrest this woman," and I'd say, "Okay, well, why? What law she broke?" "Oh, she forgot to write a couple of notes for her kids or something for school." I'd be like, "What are you talking about? Forget it." And then if I actually went through it, yeah, you think I'd shackle her like she was Hannibal Lecter? It's insane.
Well, Ms. Giles should say, by you demanding a doctor's note from me, that's violating my child's HIPAA rights. You don't have any business knowing why my kid was seen by a doctor.
And
why do they need a note anyhow?
That's what I mean. There are no rights.
If your kid's got a sniffle, or if your kid, has diarrhea or something, you keep the kid home from school. You don't necessarily bring it to a doctor every time if it's just something that's, maybe the kid had, been on a ride or something, got too dizzy on the swings, and he threw up, so you let him stay home for the day. You get his schoolwork.
That's all to make people terrified to do anything that you think's best. You better do exactly what the school says, the government-run school says, or else, this could happen to you, lady.
Yeah, well, not everybody gets free Obamacare. Some people actually have to buy their own insurance or have to pay their own doctor bills. So you don't bring the kid off to the doctor every time it gets a sniffle. You know it's a sniffle. You know it's going to get over in 3 days. You know, kid's going to feel crappy for a couple days, but it's okay. Or if the kid gets a chicken pox or something, you don't have to run to the doctor for something as common as that. And you don't have to tell anybody what your child's condition is or why it saw a doctor. So they are violating this woman's civil rights, her parents' rights, her legal rights, her civil rights. They put that woman in shackles. She was not violent. She committed no violent crime. She was there on a misdemeanor of school truancy that could be sorted out. And they shackle her. That tells the kid the government is the boss. Even your mother is not the boss. Let me tell you something. My mother was my world. There was nobody above my mother. My mother was the big boss. And my mother let the school know that, too.
It's not how it's going to be in the new world. The state is going to be God, and parents are going to be nothing. That's it. That's what it's going to be.
Well, I'm absolutely flabbergasted over that poor woman. There is no need for that. One good thing, want to hear some good news?
Yeah.
There is a smart judge somewhere from the Associated Press in a rare, unanimous decision on the issue of gun rights. The Supreme Court today issued a ruling in Tony Henderson versus the United States. The case dealt with Henderson's right to transfer his firearms to a third party after being convicted of a felony crime. We talked about this. The guy was dealing marijuana, and he was a corrections officer, so he had guns. Well, once he was convicted of dealing marijuana, he lost his rights to own a gun because now he's a convicted felon. The government had the cops had confiscated his guns and did not want to give them back to him. The court decided that that was his property, and he could sell them, even though he couldn't be in possession of them. They were to go from the police department to the person who purchases the guns from him. So they could not steal his property, even though it was guns. So that's good news. Also, in the gun rights, in D.C., they were told that they had to give concealed weapons permits to people. They were withholding them, and that was violating people's civil rights. So to violate the court, the D.C. government decided, well, you have to have a good reason to have a concealed weapons permit. And if the police department didn't like your good reason, then you weren't getting a permit. Well, the court found that that was illegal, too. If you're in the business of giving people permits for guns, then you have to give a gun to everybody who passes a background check. They don't have to have a reason. They don't have to tell you a reason why they want that gun. So that also is good news. As far as the immigration thing, that judge, I don't know how much power he has. I think the only power that the judge has to go after the lawyers who are breaking the law with this immigration thing. He can't go after the government. He could go after the government, but he says, if I find the government, it's the taxpayers that are going to pay it. The people who are actually jerking you around aren't going to feel a thing. So I think the only thing that he can do to punish Jay Johnson in the Department of Justice for violating his injunction is to go after the law licenses of the lawyers who are acting criminally by still loading those computers and giving people work permits, and then they upped them to 3 years instead of 2 years just to go around this judge. And we told everybody, remember that Monday that the judge was going to make his decision, we told everybody that over the weekend, the people who were responsible to put all that information into the computers, they were let out of work early on Friday, and they were to spend their whole weekend loading the computers with as many possible illegal immigrant information as they could get into them before they had to go to court on Monday. Well, after the injunction came down, those people continued to load those computers in violation of that order. So that's who's going to end up getting stiffed, is the ones who are following orders, putting the information into the computers. Once those illegals are into the computers, they have a pending status. So that stops them from being deported. So what type of repercussions do the people have? What avenues do they have?
None.
Here we are thinking we're free, but you have to have a permit to get married. You have to have a permit to fish. You have to have a permit to get a gun, and that's a right. That says shall not be infringed. You shouldn't have to need a permit for anything.
No, I know. You should need a permit to get married. You should need a permit to do anything that's not illegal otherwise.
Right. You need a permit to fix your roof. Guys, we're in trouble. All right, so now you know Hillary Clinton was trying to turn Libya into her own private playground. She was making deals. You know that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the rush job is because we're expecting a global economic collapse, and that's to rush in and fill the void when the vacuum is created. We know that Jade Helm is to get people used to seeing the military around, and it's also a threat, actually. We know that there's a hell of a lot more of them than 1,200. We know that they're having exercises with our local police departments who are not going overseas. And we know that the government is paying agitators to start riots, to protest things that, the government thinks that, that any type of trash to start. We know that they're robbing banks to get the money to pay them. So what are we going to do? We better be prepared, folks.
Wish I knew.
We better
do
be
not
prepared.
Comply. That's all.
You know what I learned from Jade Helm? I learned that you should have a group of patriots ready to go. And when the chips hit the fan in the big cities, commandeer the Walmart first. Get there first. Because that way, if you run that store, you are a government. You get to set up a soup line or a supply line or whatever. If those stores get looted, all the products will go to few people. If you commandeer the store, a lot more people will have a chance of survival and making it, because that way you control it. So that's what I learned from Jade Helm. The chips are going to hit the fan. We better be prepared.
Yep.
Want to add anything to that?
No, just, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well,
I'm lost for words.
Then say goodnight, everybody.
Okay, good night, everybody. Good luck.
All right, thank you. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today, and we'd like to thank you all for tuning in to Zone 13. To our listeners, callers, and colleagues, thank you so much. As always, a special thank you to Scott Ferrarello, my awesome co-host. Stay tuned to freedomizerradio.com today and every day to keep up with the latest news and information you can use. And we'll see you here next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. On that note, Zone 13 out. We love you, America.